Previously, Jang Yoon and Chai Hoon said their goodbyes as the former is going to the army and it would take 2 years before they see each other again. That being said, Jang Yoon's time in the army was hard, but it surprisingly feels like it went so fast. In the few times he was discharged, he spent it alone and didn't contact anyone. 2 years passed and it feels like nothing has changed. Jang Yoon is looking over his class schedule, unknowingly writing Chai Hoon's name. This too hasn't changed. His attempts to forget his feelings for Chai Hoon for the past years have been utterly and completely useless. He wonders if he'll see Chai Hoon at school. The next day, Mihi asked Jang Yoon to go to the students' lounge as per usual, but when he got there, he saw a group of girls instead. Jang Yoon sat on the chair awkwardly and texted Mihi, who was supposed to be there. One of the girls approaches Jang Yoon to talk to him. The girl asked if it was his first time at the students' lounge. The rest of them later followed her after and talked to him casually. It was clear they mistook him for a freshman. They introduced each other and later bombarded the newcomer with questions. They asked if he went to the orientation since they didn't see him. He subtly answers that he did 3 years ago. The room went quiet as the girls realized that they've been talking casually to a senior 3 years older. They felt embarrassed for talking casually, and Jang Yoon, being kind, didn't mind at all. Mihi arrives and learned about what happened but reassured the freshman that Jang Yoon is kind enough to not mind it at all. The girls felt happy and Mihi introduced Jang Yoon again as someone who just went back from the army. Jang Yoon mentions to Mihi that he hasn't seen the guys. The latter explained that most of them went to the army too and that some of them would have already been discharged as well. He learned that Chai Hoon apparently went to the army too. Jang Yoon always wondered how he's been and was glad to hear about him after 2 years. Suddenly, Jang Yoon receives an unexpected call. It was from Chai Hoon. He stares at it unsure if he was seeing it right before answering. Chai Hoon asked if he was at school, if his class was done, and if he was heading home. All answered shortly by the dazed Jang Yoon. Chai Hoon simply said okay after his series of questions, which left Jang Yoon confused, but even more so because they weren't in a kind of relationship where they call each other casually. Later, Chai Hoon arrives at the lounge and Jang Yoon blushed as he finally saw his crush after 2 years. Chai Hoon coolly enters the room greeting everyone and he sits right next to Jang Yoon. Jang Yoon sneaks a peek at Chai Hoon and thought that he's as handsome as usual. Chai Hoon, who seems pleased for some reason, turns to Jang Yoon to ask if his class was over. When asked if he's had coffee, Jang Yoon said no and Chai Hoon quickly stood up and signals to Jang Yoon, who unconsciously followed Chai Hoon. The dazed Jang Yoon was still confused while Chai Hoon grabbed his bag and told him that they should get out of there. Chai Hoon's finally making his move after 2 years and I'm loving it. I'm glad he ended his facade of ignoring Jang Yoon. Both of them leaves to get coffee while the girls are left squealing over the handsome men. Mihi laughed at the girls' reaction and asked who they think is more handsome, but they couldn't decide because both of them are. Jang Yoon is on the pretty boy category. They both look so good here. The two of them arrive at a cafe near Jang Yoon's neighborhood, which he didn't expect at all as Chai Hoon just said he was going this way anyway. I think he just wants an excuse to take him home tbh. He didn't expect to see a spontaneous side of Chai Hoon at all. Later, he wanted to pay for his coffee as usual, but Chai Hoon insists on paying it, assuring him that he has a lot of money, meaning he wants to treat him a lot and not worry. He hesitated but accepted anyway. They sit in silence for a while sipping their coffee. Jang Yoon steals glances from his crush and notices his slightly matured look. Jang Yoon comments on how Chai Hoon didn't change a bit while the latter says that he's just as he remembers him too. They continued their conversation asking where they were assigned in the army. Chai Hoon mentions that he applied right after he heard that Jang Yoon was enlisting. Oh my god, he really likes him, I'm now truly sure of it. When asked if he had fun, Chai Hoon simply laughed at Jang Yoon's question and the latter realized how silly his question was and apologizes, but Chai Hoon assures him that he doesn't mind it if he asks more question about him. Though he didn't have any more questions except for one. He didn't see a promise ring nor a sudden call. He'd feel silly to ask and wasn't ready if the answer was yes. Do you have a girlfriend? Jang Yoon thought he asked it loudly, but it was Chai Hoon who asked first, which caught him off guard. He simply answers it's impossible since he was in the army this whole time, and when asked the same, Chae-hoon says that he was in the army too. This made Jang-yoon feel incredibly happy. Although he feels it doesn't really matter, his feelings still remain euphoric from that day. The coffee was warm and so was his heart. A few days passed, and it was their sports day. Chae-hoon is seen playing basketball while Jang-yoon wonders why he still dazzles even when sweating from playing. But it didn't seem like he was the only one, as many schoolmates were crushing over him too, which made him laugh. TBH, I'm Jang-yoon during sports day, incredibly uninterested. Few days back, Mihi was recruiting Jang-yoon for kick volleyball, which he initially refused. Someone does the same for Chae-hoon too. He was going to refuse, but after hearing Jang-yoon agree, he changed his mind and said yes. We're finally seeing Chae-hoon openly show interest on Jang-yoon. At present, kick volleyball game starts and Jang-yoon is already hot and sweaty, which he so hates. He tries to kick the ball, but it went to the opposite direction instead. He's such a klutz. While trying to fan himself, he didn't notice the ball approaching him and got hit on the face and fell down. Chae-hoon hurriedly runs to him to check if he was okay. Their faces were so close that Jang-yoon couldn't think straight and he blued profusely, so he pushes Chae-hoon away. Chae-hoon seems to be upset about this while Jang-yoon flushed as he thinks of his huge hands and firmly chest. While resting, Jang-yoon felt relieved that most people from their department took his inability to play lightly. They didn't mind at all and even said he looks cute. Mihi even jokes that Jang-yoon ranks first as #1 funniest to watch, and he jokingly responds that at least he's good at something, and they both warmly laughed. Minsu saw this warm interaction and asked if the two were dating, which Jang-yoon denies as she was out of his league. Before he could continue, he felt a splash of cold water. It was Chae-hoon who splashed himself with cold water, seemingly upset. Jang-yoon tries to talk to him, but the latter stayed quiet and left coldly. For sure he's jealous. He didn't thought much of it. The others' chatter caught his attention. Apparently, Chae-hoon bought them snacks, which was egg sandwich, Jang-yoon's favorite. Who bets that it's exactly for that reason that Chae-hoon chose egg sandwich? Look forward for part 4. Thank you. Preview for part 4.